Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. David Mercieca is a landscape photographer based in Australia, living on Sydney's northern beaches, capturing the unique beauty of our natural world. He specialises in photographing the natural world, but also loves to experiment and create unusual and unique images with no limits to the imagination. David began his photographic journey about 20 years ago, beginning with his initial inspirations from travelling and a love for the outdoors, transitioning through life changes, and the rekindling of his passion after a break from photography of several years. We discussed David's approach to photography, including his shift from capturing memories to pursuing creative fulfillment, his experimentation with different techniques, and his experiences with competitions and exhibitions. David also reflects on the importance of photography in capturing moments in nature, his challenges with printing, and the emotional and experiential rewards the craft offers. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hello, David. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Hi, Grant. Going well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. As I said before we started, I've got you on because of the quality of your work, and I want to talk a little bit about how you do some of that stuff, but I'm more interested in why you do what you do, and I'm more interested in finding out about how you got started and where your photographic inspirations come from. So why don't we start with that? Where does your photographic inspiration come from?
Look, I think it came from my love of the outdoors more than anything else. That's why I started like years and years ago. So I started 20 or 30 years ago in my mid-20s. And I was shooting on a Canon A1 and shooting transparencies after finding the sort of normal negative type photos didn't really do it for me.
Yep.
And look, I was traveling a lot at the time. I was in some really exotic sort of parts of the world, and I really enjoyed shooting what was around me, but also the people, and trying to capture like what was there, but more for my own memories than anything else. And then, of course, kids come along, and I was listening to one of your stories about Canada. I've got a horror story from Canada as well, but I'll tell you that a bit later. But that's when I actually decided that it was just too hard to do both things and be a parent and carry around all this full frame photography gear with me everywhere. It was either the pram or the box of camera gear. So the pram won, I think. And then I completely forgot about it for years, and then decided I actually got a headshot done, a corporate headshot done with Nina Bilby, which you probably know.
Yeah.
And just being in the studio and seeing what she was doing, and she showed me a bit of her street work, and I thought, and I started thinking about the old slides that I had down in the basement and gathering dust and mold. And I decided to just have a go. So I bought some secondhand gear and gave it a try. And I think if it wasn't for Instagram, I wouldn't have stuck it out initially. But yeah, that's really where it comes from. But it completely changed. My first shot, which is my profile shot, was shot down at Turrametta, which is not far now from where I live. And I'd never done landscapes before. I'd never used a filter before, except for a polarizing filter. And I think I had one lens for years, like it was a 28-200, and that's all I had. So for me now, it's more about the creative side of it than capturing and documenting where I'm going. Anything else. And that really becomes addictive very quickly.
So what is photography in your life? Is it a hobby? Is it a career? What is it that you do with your photography other than stick it on Instagram?
Look, I'd like it to be more than it is, and I'm working hard, not hard enough, but trying to work harder every year. And I think a couple of years ago, I decided that it wasn't just a hobby. I really loved it. And you got to love it as you get up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning and travel for half an hour sometimes, or a couple of hours to get to a site, and then maybe come home with nothing sometimes. So for me, I'm at the stage now where I'd really like something more out of it, but I don't know what that is, and I'm not trying to chase it. I'm just trying to work, and that's the reason why I took the route that I did a couple of years ago. It seems to be paying off because my work has really improved in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I was famous for slanty horizons and all of
We all start there. This is the thing. You don't understand until you actually look at this and you get into it in a big way and think about what it is that you're doing, that what you're doing is not right or is less appealing. Because there are no rules. If you want slanty horizons, that's fine. I've seen some very good slanty horizon shots. I've seen some bloody awful ones too. But
I think a lot of what I found in the first couple of years that I started taking it seriously was that I used to be this terrible person that would rush home from a shoot and slap edit something and then I've got to get it on Instagram as fast as possible. And I'm still guilty of that even today. I post things that as soon as I post them, I find a flaw in them and I kick myself. So I haven't yet learned a lesson of trying to leave it. I hear some of the people on your podcast and they leave it for 3 weeks or
Some of them for months or even years.
yeah, for months. So I haven't got to that stage yet. But for me, it's about being out there. I love being in the water. I love the swell coming up and some of the best memories I've got of North Cornwall on a big day, which is
Yeah.
still probably one of my favorite shots ever. Is I've had a couple of great experiences down there.
Yeah, I think you're quite right in what you were saying there. It is about the experience, and whether you're doing, as you say, a slap edit or doing something a bit more polished, it is about the experience, and that's certainly why I do it. And most of the people I talk to, that seems to be what it is that they're trying to convey is here's an experience I had. There was nobody else around or very few people around, and I'm now sharing it with the world. Yeah.
It's great. And the good thing, particularly when you fixed on an area like I am, I've got Palm Beach to Manly most times. Like I'm too lazy to go across the bridge half the time. And every time you do go out, you just never know what you're going to get. The swell's always a bit different and the flow's different, and you never know what the sky is going to do. So for me, it's always that you're always going to get a fresh image, regardless of how many times you've been at a location. Yeah.
So is that how you stay inspired by the guessing the conditions or just putting up with whatever it is that you get?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more choosy about getting out of bed these days. So the app helps. Sometimes it fools me and I get out of bed for nothing. But look, it's great to seeing the sun come up. It's one of those things in life that's free that it doesn't matter how much money you got. Everyone gets the same experience, and it comes back to that again. But then I try to manipulate, and I like to manipulate what's there, what the eye can't see. And I was like, all I was doing at one point was just long exposures, and I really enjoyed doing them. But now I try to get more out of a scene than just a nice flat piece of water and some mist. And I go a little bit too far sometimes, but you just don't know if you don't try.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess that's an important point that I like to explore that with people is how do you experiment and how do you deal with the disappointments that come along with experimentation? Because when you experiment, you are going to fail sometimes. That's the whole nature of experimentation. So how do you deal with the disappointments? But more interestingly, what things are you experimenting with and what techniques are you using or playing with?
Look, I've been called like eclectic. I don't know if they were trying to be nice or not, but I dabble in a lot of things. I get bored quite easily and I do lose my inspiration sometimes. And that's why, like even during COVID, I was determined not to let COVID win. And I went into the studio and hodgepodge together a few lights and things and got stuck into that kind of thing. And it was the same with black and white. But because I went down this path of exhibitions and things, I wanted to get the biggest bang for my buck as possible. So I wanted to get more into black. And I didn't really know that I liked black and whites. But what I found was that you can go absolutely crazy with a black and white. And it's not really sacrilege as you would do with a seascape, for instance. And I really am enjoying that, is just trying to create something completely different out of what was there on the scene, which is with a seascape, to do it justice, you really should be as close to the scene as possible.
Yeah.
So that's my outlet now. I went through a stage with seascapes where I was messing with things a bit too much, and now I've had a break from it. I want to go back and I want to be much more true to the scene. I sometimes am.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have a process or do you set creative challenges? Do you think about goals in your photography at all?
These days I do. And I think what I tried to do the last couple of years was really just focus on, I spent more time on Photoshop than I did outside at one point.
Okay.
because that, like, I was terrified of Photoshop at the start. Like, I was a Lightroom person, and a few little touches here and there, and off I was. And at first I thought it was absolutely disgusting to manipulate images anyway, because I come from transparencies, and I recently looked at my transparencies, and I thank God that there are digital processing, post-processing tools. But for me, it's really 60% of what we do to really get a good image. I'm sure you got to be on location, you got to be in the right place at the right time and
Yeah,
all
you
that.
got to capture a good image in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm not the type of person now that'll go out and shoot 500 frames in a morning kind of thing
Okay.
and then pick a few out. I'll be a bit more picky about what I'm doing. And I know I've got the confidence that I know what I want out of the image when I see it in the back of the camera. And so for me, I'm trying more and more. I've got to swing back now and get out into the field again because
Yeah.
because I've dried up my catalog anyway. I've got to get back out there. I've got no choice.
Fair
Um,
enough. Fair enough.
yeah.
Did photography become art for you as opposed to just recording something that you've seen? And was that back in the transparency days, or was it came a bit later?
No, long exposures was the first I had of that, and doing studio work was
Yeah.
a real eye opener. And unfortunately, I borrowed because I sold all of my X gear to try, and costs are complicated. I traded a lot of stuff in to tidy up my GFX kit, and I lost my 60mm macro, it wasn't a fantastic lens, but it was perfect for me. And so I
Yeah.
just recently did an experiment with an extender on a pancake lens because I went back to basics and I ended up with a 50mm pancake in the middle. And I was really surprised. You're always surprised what comes out from a little drop of soap and dishwater, and it's weird the things that you can do. So for me, that if I had the right equipment, I'd be doing it all the time.
Yeah.
But my main love and passion is being out there, and the wetter the better for me.
When you go out into the field, you mentioned you're being very picky. Are you pre-visualizing what it is that you're looking for, or are you more just responding to the landscape as you see it?
I do a bit more now. A lot of the time, the first few years I was doing it, I would go back to the same spot because my goal was to actually perfect that location and that spot. And
Sure.
I'd see people from up on the northern beaches, people like Chris Wright and those guys that were really taking some great images. And so for me, I was trying to get out there and do similar things. And Whale Beach is a great example because if you stand on that vent at
Yeah.
Whale Beach, you get actually a 180 or nearly 180-degree view.
Yeah.
So you can swing your camera around and try different things. And then places like Cool, the bigger the swell, you've got to think about those days a lot differently. So it really depends. But now I'm trying to find different things. I'm trying to find different ways of doing things and trying to find different locations as well. So I need to get out more. That's the thing. I'm a bit locked in at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So, in terms of your style, if somebody asked you, you mentioned somebody told you was eclectic, how would you describe it?
I don't know. Mishmash would probably be the best way to put it. You know what? It's weird because it's a fickle beast.
Yeah,
I can publish a pink photograph that I'm not completely happy with, but I often experiment and go, let's see what's going to happen with this one. You end up with like hundreds of likes, and
yeah.
then you put 40 hours into a black and white, and
Black and white just doesn't play on Instagram. It's just
no,
completely and utterly ignored.
and
Put
that
out
that's
one of my favorite black and white images last week, or yeah, it must have been last week or the week before. Anyway, I think it got 50 likes.
it makes no logical sense. So no.
But I personally love it, and this is why for me, I've given up trying to follow the algorithm and follow the trends and whatever. I post what I've created and what I like, and I don't really care. Yeah, I look at it and I go, yeah, it's disappointing that nobody got to see it or nobody liked it, but that's okay. I liked it.
And that's an important point because when I started Instagram, I thought of it more of a journal, right?
Yeah, right.
And I used to put my settings in there because I still do it just out of habit, but I used to put my settings in there so I could remember what I was doing. Because back in the day, I used to write stuff in a notebook and
Yeah,
then wait 3 months to afford to get it processed and then look at the notebook and go, what was I thinking there, kind of thing. And so it's still a journal for me, but I'm a bit more careful about the quality of work that I publish,
yeah,
and that's as long as I'm publishing something I'm happy with, then the rest is up to the Instagram gods, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I think it was Gab Scanu. He posted a reel or something talking about people complaining about the algorithm and whatever, and saying if you want growth, then you've got to post what people like. And I don't disagree with that. But I just replied to him, no, I'm just posting what I like, what I've done and what I like, and I don't care whether anyone else likes it. It's to me, it makes no odds because it's only one channel. There are for me anyway, there's other places where I post work where I get far more engagement on a black and white or on a weirdly different piece of work that I've done. And so I pick it up there and go, yeah, somebody over there likes it anyway.
And that's important. You've got to have an outlet other than Instagram. I didn't have one until 2 years ago. And you really don't know if you're any good at all. Like, unless you've got a lot of self-confidence, you really don't know whether it's just an algorithm or whether it's just pink or whatever. And
Yeah.
when I started exhibiting, like going into international comps and things, that's when I started to realize, hang on, you got to pick up your game. You're only getting one acceptance out of 32,
Yeah.
32 images that are accepted. And then when that starts to grow, then you start to where you're going right. And for me, that's the best avenue outside of socials, is to continue that journey on that path.
So what got you started in doing exhibitions and competitions, etc.?
I think I was looking for an avenue that would help me understand what I was doing right and, more importantly, what I was doing wrong.
Sure.
And I wanted to have to be judged by people who were doing this all the time, for one, who weren't scrolling in nanoseconds like we all do, and to really look at the images and give me feedback. And honestly, without exhibitions, I thought about doing print exhibitions here locally, and I really couldn't afford the investment, and it wasn't going to give me what I needed anyway. What I
Sure.
really needed was valid feedback. And so I tried the better photography one. I think that was the first one, and it was really positive. And the great thing about that comp is it gives you detailed, even though it's templated, it gives you detailed feedback on what you should be doing. That was the start. That was the start for me. And then I found out about the app process and then I started going down that avenue to try and reach a standard. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, okay. Do you think that's influenced your style in any way? As in, how, I guess the other way of asking the same question is, how has that influenced your style? Has it changed what you were doing before, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a visual storytelling or a visual impact perspective?
I haven't really got to that stage yet. So what it really did for me was two things. I think it improved the quality of the work, which was the key reason for doing it. But it
Sure.
also, because when you enter comps, you've got monochrome, you've got color, you've got nature. And so then that actually broadened what I was doing, because I didn't want to just submit 4 color images to it.
Yeah.
I wanted to get the maximum return. And as soon as I got started on black and whites, I was, oh, this is something I would have never expected before. And I started playing around with black and whites with landscapes. And then I saw the likes of Graham Gordon. I think it was actually on your podcast that I first
Okay.
saw it, and then started digging into his work. And what I try to do with the things I've been doing over the summer is to try and find locations similar to what people like Graham and other people have been doing locally, but
Mm.
try something different, like either a different angle or a
Yep.
completely different way of showing that same location. And I
Yeah.
try to do that with color as well. But I think, as we said earlier on the northern beaches, you've got a lot of options, more than most people have. But it does become a challenge because the conditions and you know what you're looking for. And places like Longreef are very interesting that way, because they still challenge me every time I go down there. And you can go for sunset and sunrise. It's one of the few places up here you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer your question, it actually broadened my skill set. And every time I find that you step out of your comfort zone, your work improves tremendously in the medium term. Anyway, yeah.
I guess one of the things you talked about there was looking at the conditions. Are you doing a lot of that pre-visualization before you're going out and thinking about, okay, the apps say it's 100% cloud and therefore I'm going to go for a sunrise shoot down at long reef or Collaroy or wherever it happens to be? Or are you just going somewhere and then working with the landscape in that space?
Look, I still use the app heavily to figure out the couple of apps that I use, SwellNet and the other couple that I use. And I try and figure out where the best location is. And it's too extreme. So it's either going to be like perfect for warm skies and beautiful pinks and colors, or it's going to be, completely overcast. And the great thing about having the black and whites is I was learning from these other people was that overcast is great for these. That's great because you really don't have an excuse not to do something when you've got those kind of alternatives.
Yeah.
And I've tried playing around with fog and mist and that type of thing. And I'm really lucky because I'm up here near Akuna Bay. So it actually, the fog settles in really well and down in the national park there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does success look like for you in your photography? Is it winning competitions? Is it praise from friends and family or other peers in the realm? Or is it just satisfaction that you've taken a good shot?
Oh, look, there's a lot of that. A lot of it's about satisfying my OCD and all those things. I used to do that through sport and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm very creative anyway. And even in my work, I do creative job. I'm a programmer by trade, not so much anymore. But so for me, sure, getting like awards from comps is great. But what I'm trying to do is just elevate my work to a level that's, I wouldn't say professional, but I'd like to get to the point where I'm seen as a very strong photographer. And for me, Instagram still provides one outlet, and that is that the local people on the east coast of Australia and those people that we both know quite well, have that community is also very nice. And that's something that I've been missing in the last year. But for me, it's about elevating the work and continuing to work hard and having people that I know are very good at what they do starting to like my work. That's an achievement for me.
Yeah, cool. Have you done, talking about the community, have you done much collaboration with other photographers or joined up for Insta meets or anything like that recently?
No, not recently. I've been a hermit for about 9 months. But the last one I went to, Carmel and Charmaine dragged me out, and I went down to the sunrise meet at Collaroy and had a great time down there.
Yeah, nice.
And I was first introduced to all that through the Raw team.
Yep.
And I was like everybody, I was a mod for the first couple of years and wanted to see how that was. And that's how I met pretty much everyone I know in that local circle is through the collaborative meets that they used to do with Sunrise Club.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, look, I try to get out with people whenever I can, but it's not an easy thing at the moment.
Do you prefer shooting alone or with other people?
Yeah, mate, I'm a technology consultant by trade, and I talk to people all week long, and I do Zoom sessions like 6 times a day. So for me, having a little quiet is a good thing, but I like to keep those connections and relationships going as well, and they're all very patient with me, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people think photography is a very solitary sport, but there is something about enjoying it with other people. And there's a few people that I go out, I won't say regularly, irregularly is probably the best way of putting it, but love going out alone. But I think there's also great fun in having a bit of social. I'd probably say the quality of my work or the amount of work that I do suffers a bit if I'm with other people because we're normally chatting rather than taking photos. But
I know because you set it up for that day.
That's right,
and you still get surprising things come out of it. The Collaroid shoot wasn't a murky day. It wasn't terrific. And then all of a sudden the sun popped out. And it's really nice to have a bit of a chat afterwards and catch up with people. So I really enjoy it, but I do like the solitude and you really get deeply into the experience when you're on your own, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of where photography is in your life, how do you balance work, photography, and family life?
Look, I don't, it suffers and it takes a back seat some of the time. When I first started shooting, I was like out all the time, chasing sunrises around the place. And yeah, my family's very patient. I was into triathlon before this and
okay, yeah.
They never saw me with triathlon, so they're quite happy with my choice this time. But obviously family comes first. My girls are older now as well. So it's more a matter of me chasing them around, trying to find time with them than the other way around. And so for me, there is a balance there. There wasn't a balance with work last year, but I fixed that problem. And apart from the limitations I've had, which are now over, hopefully, I can get back out and get started again and
Yeah.
really get stuck into it.
Do you ever see yourself taking it up as a full-time gig when you retire, or is it something that you,
Yeah, every time I'm on a Zoom call, I do. I love technology. I've been doing it for coming up to 40 years in a couple of years' time. And for me, I really am starting to think about what is next and how,
yeah,
my work's not there yet, but I think in a couple of years, if I try hard, I think I'll be in a good spot. Like
yeah.
you're never going to get rich from landscape photography, but
No, I can attest to that.
yeah, it's a fool's errand trying to make money from it. But I think I want to incorporate the travel aspects again, like I did when I was in.
Yeah.
That's one of the key goals I have. But sure, I'd love to work. I would even work for free. I've even offered my work myself for my services for
Oh,
free.
don't do that.
I know I've been told not to, but it would be just awesome just to work as a
I
professional.
know what you mean. I do know what you mean. I've done a couple of gratis gigs, but they're only for friends. I won't do it if it's a commercial entity. I'm all about, okay, you're going to get billed, and here's what it's going to cost. And I'm very upfront with it, but I don't give out any charity to a business unless it's a charity.
Yeah, yeah. No, I look, I think the biggest problem for me at the moment is exposure, and that's why it's on. And
Can't eat exposure. That's something that I think a lot of photographers that do try to go down that route and end up, I think, being a little bit disappointed. Don't get me wrong, there are ways of digging yourself out of it, but if you start giving stuff away, it then becomes very difficult to start charging people for it, particularly repeat customers.
oh, I know. I look, that's why I shut down the website a couple of years ago, and I've just redone it after procrastinating for a while. And I'm hoping that that sort of leads a little bit more
Yeah,
interest in work. But at the moment, all I'm trying to do is I set myself this goal of not trying to go hard at trying to chase it
yeah.
and just continue working and just produce good quality work. And that's the main.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You've mentioned a couple of spots that I'm familiar with, Tarameta and so forth. Where is your favourite spot to go, and why is it that it calls you back?
Outside of the northern beaches, it has to be Bermagui for me. Like I've been
Yeah,
down there probably every year for the last four, I think, and I just love it there. The first time I saw Horsehead Rock was really the first time I thought, wow, this is awesome. It was a guy, I can't remember his name, you'd know him, and he got Photographer of the Year, and he got the front cover of Australian Photography magazine. He did an astro shot there.
yep.
And I thought, wow, that if I could do that one day, that'd be enough for me, kind of thing. So that would be one of my favorite places at the moment.
Have you
And
done Astro at Horsehead yet?
no,
It's a commitment. You got to be there for a while because
yeah, look, I'm thinking I'll camp there and that's
yeah,
probably the easiest way to go. I've been waiting to get a tracker, and I think with Astro, I just haven't had the equipment,
yeah,
and so now I'm nearly set up for it, and I've just got to get a tracker, and then
yeah,
I'll start playing around with it. But yeah, it would be Horsehead Rock. I did a bike trip down to the Great Ocean Road, and Victoria's got so much to offer. I'd love to explore more of Victoria as well. But
yeah,
up here, Wales my favourite. I was mentioning that earlier in the
yeah. Okay, yeah,
podcast, and Whale on a good day is just it's just awesome, and Avalon too. If you go around the corner, they're two favorite spots. I love the Devil's Cauldron, but it's very hard to get out there, and it's a long way to get there.
yep.
But Wales,
You got to time that one right.
yeah, and it's a commitment to get out there, like
Yeah,
30 minutes in the dark, and but that's one of my favorite spots, and I've had some great experiences there, and obviously North Curl is probably right up there as well.
yeah, right.
Big day, big swell day, yeah.
Do you think where you live and the places that you shoot regularly have influenced how you shoot?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So when I first started back, I was living over at Pymble, and I was many times I was coming down the Powderworks Road and the sun turned red, and
Yep.
I just missed it by 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
and it was always my mission in life to come live here. But it's a completely different beast when you're working with the sea, and yeah, you do build skills when you're on the coast all the time compared to if you're just shooting inland or doing wildlife, for instance. It's a completely different thing, and
Oh,
you got to
yeah.
have wits about you. I haven't been washed away yet, but I've come pretty close a couple of times. So yeah, there's that, and that's what it's that kind of adrenaline aspect of it as well. And a big
Yeah.
swell, it's really adds to the experience altogether. So yeah.
Yeah, I always get the hair stand up on the back of my neck when you're digging around in your bag looking for a lens cap or something that you want
Turn away.
and you can hear the roar coming,
Yeah.
and then you turn around and look at it, and it's like a little bit of 2 foot slop and doesn't do anything.
Yeah, there's that. And then it sneaks up on you sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, that 2 foot slop hits a rock and just covers you in water. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
I've
I
had
can
that done.
up at North Curly, the roar on a big day,
Yeah,
especially there was one day, which is one of my favorite images that I think I sent you. And I was there on my own. It was one of those mornings where I thought, what am I even getting in the car for? It's like raining. And I went down there and it's unusual to not find anyone at North Curl on a big swell day. And there was absolutely no one there.
yeah.
And then I'm thinking, is this a good idea? Or yeah, okay. And
How far down the steps did you go?
I got into the water. Yeah, I'm a bit of a lunatic at times, but I got into the water and I tucked my XT2 at the time behind a rock with the tripod on, but I jammed it up against the rock and just timed it and then shoved my tripod up into the air whenever the swell got too hot. And there are times there where I've had the swell up to my chest and it's been pretty full on.
Yeah,
So
wow.
yeah, it's memories from that place. It just, yeah, there's
Yeah.
countless. Yeah.
I've been fairly lucky. I haven't gone chest deep too often, unless I've been wading to Horsehead, but or wading back from Horsehead. You've just timed it a bit wrong, and you get around that second point, and the water's a bit deeper than you thought. But
Yeah, it can catch you there too, for sure. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But I specifically bought a wet bag for that trip simply because I knew that I was going to be there a while, and that the tides were likely to make me come unstuck a little bit at some point. But
Right.
yeah, try not to go chest deep though.
That's having to eat twice, I think.
It's not fun.
With the new camera gear, I'm less inclined to do it. The insurance is too high on the damn thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. What's your most memorable experience? Is it cool in that kind of swell, or
It'd have to be Coco would have to be right up there. And the first time I went down to Horsehead, I got a reverse sunset. And people actually think I dropped the sky in that particular time, but it was just this weird, like dragon flame sky. And there was about four of us there, and we just four people that never met each other. We were just absolutely in awe of what was
yeah,
going on. But up here, it'd have to be it'd be cool. Would be my favorite, and the slot at Narrabeen's good fun too when it's coming in. But yeah, Curly's got a soft spot. I got a soft spot for Curly for sure.
so what has photography taught you about nature?
Look, it's just that we have to look after it more than anything else. I think that's the best point to put across at the moment. Wanda Creswell, she collects after every shoot, and it's really distressing how bad things are getting. But it's just the awe of nature. I did a sunrise. I went down with my wife to Cathedral Rocks,
Yep.
and it was just one of those really gorgeous pink mornings, and you're just amazed at how it turns it on sometimes for us. And we live in such a great environment. Like I lived in the UK for 12 years, and people in the UK just don't they'll never really understand what we have at our fingertips here
Yeah.
as far as nature goes. But we've got to look after it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What do you like in terms of planning for a trip like Horsehead? Do you spend days, weeks poring over tides and all the rest of it, or do you just jump in the car with the gear and off you go?
Yeah, no, I don't really like if I'm aiming for something like we talked about before with Astro at Horsehead, obviously I look at
Yeah.
and all that. But for the most part, for a trip to Bermagui, it's just like when can I get the time to do it? And the meaner the weather's looking, the better lately, because that's the kind of thing I'm trying to capture. And sometimes it's just for me, it's getting on the bike and getting the two things together. And I went up to Crescent Head a few times last year, and that was fantastic. And so for me, I try to combine the things. Like I try to combine the bike with the camera gear, and that's what the trip round down to Great Ocean Road was. It's a famous motorcycle trip, so I wanted to try.
Yeah.
So I don't really plan that much, but I'm looking at going overseas at the end of the year. And for that, I'm going to try and plan a bit more and get some local advice as well. Because I'm looking to go into Indonesia, and the tides there are completely different to what we're used to. And I don't know if Daniel Corden
Yeah.
so he got washed badly up against the rocks. So I'll be doing planning for that. But for the most part, it's like roughly the time of year. that I would plan for if I was going overseas.
Yeah.
But locally, it's like when I can get out, when I can get on the bike and
Yeah.
leave the dog with the family and take off.
And what about processing? Are you straight home and straight into editing, or are you one to let things marinate for a bit?
I'm not a marinator. I'm
No?
hopeless. I went to Utah in 2019 and I was editing on the road while I was like touring because there's not much to do when you're traveling on your own. But now I wouldn't do that. I'd bring them back and sift through them. And I often leave a lot of stuff in the catalog that are duplicates or slight differences and then go back to them and go, yeah, that'd be interesting. We'll try that one. But yeah, I need to learn how to marinate because I find flaws every time. It's really annoying. Every time I post, I find a flaw. So I need to be more patient.
What does editing look like for you? You mentioned earlier that you do a quick slap edit on some stuff and post it, but I'm talking more about the stuff where you've actually taken a bit of time around it and had put a bit more thought into it. What kind of time and effort are you putting into your editing?
I used to do the slap and post routine with Lightroom because I was never confident on Photoshop.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I got some advice and I actually used the Easy Way photography
Oh,
method
yeah, yep.
to clean up my workflow. And so now Lightroom for me is just file storage and file management, and everything's done in Photoshop. And I've learned a huge amount about masking. Like masking is one of those techniques that you just need to work on, and started
Yeah,
with cropping in skies and with the black and whites, it just became a real labor intensive thing. But now I just do an hour at a time and I come back to it and
yeah,
the
right.
next day and then do another hour. But everything I do is in Photoshop now. And apart from more techniques that I haven't, which is coming this year around luminosity masking and things like that, I haven't really looked at that yet really well. For the most part, my workflow is pretty good, but I don't have a standard style either, Grant. Every image is like, it's just what comes out kind of
Yep.
thing. So I stick to the standard rules and do the cleanup and follow that process. And then when it comes to how I want it to look, I'm actually taking more out now than I'm putting in. So I'll take saturation out, I'll cut down on contrasts and try and leave color images as much as possible, as natural as possible. Black and whites, I go crazy on
Yeah.
something different.
So with one of the black and whites, what kind of time would you be spending on one of those when you're doing that lots of masking and the black sky or gradient skies and those sorts of things?
To give you an idea, I did the AMP building and everyone had taken it from the Carl Expressway. And I thought, I want to do something different. So I went across the road from it and took the wide angle out. And so that one took me about, I don't know, 35 hours to do like
Okay.
that over a couple of weeks. And I had to go at the Civil Centre, which I removed from Instagram, but that was really labor intensive. So that was actually mirroring the image and creating brick walls and all sorts of weird things. And that took probably upwards of 20 hours too. But I'm getting faster because the masking is the hardest part with all that.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't get it right, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with the creative stuff, funnily enough, the creative stuff really, it's nearly back of camera, what I've been doing lately.
Okay.
It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that like on a color shot, I gave up graduated filters a while ago, and now I do bracketing and exposure blending, and
Mhm.
that's most of what I do. So I'm learning that in the field, if you pay attention, you can save yourself hours and hours of pain.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I'm doing a lot of that. So with the color stuff, I do exposure bracketing and exposure blending
Mhm.
and a bit of time blending too. So I like to do that kind of thing. And with the black and whites, I use a piece of software called Artisan Pro, I think it's called.
Okay.
And that just helps with doing gradients and things like that and saves a
Yeah,
bit of
right.
time. But apart from that, I don't use any other tools apart from Photoshop.
Okay, cool. What about printing? Do you do much of that?
It's my kryptonite, printing. So as part of this process to get through FIAP and all that, I had to come up with 12 print acceptances. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm getting all these acceptances, I'll be fine. And then first print exhibition, sent everything off to Denmark, cost a fortune, got nothing back. Second one got one back, and I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? Changed printers. I even called up Peter Eastway here and said, have you got a printer that I can try and all that kind of thing. Printing, someone told me once that if you print your work, you really know how good it is. And
Yeah.
I think I've still got a huge amount to learn with printing.
It's a black art to me. I've tried, well, I'm relatively successful at getting a test print, in A4 format. I don't have a printer that can do bigger than A4 anyway, and it looks close, but it's never exact. And that's the thing that I'm striving for, is being able to hold the print up and next to the screen and go, yeah, that color looks like that color.
That's the hardest part. And I don't have a
Yeah.
calibrated screen, right? And
Yeah, well, I've got a calibrated screen and everything, but I'm buggered if I can get the print exactly. It's close, but it's not spot on. Yeah.
but even the printers say, because I say to them, if I send this to you and it's on your machine in the print shop,
Yeah.
it's what's come out on the printer, and they always say absolutely yes, and it's always it's slightly different.
Slightly different. Yeah. Yeah.
But my weakest part is the fact that I haven't coughed up for a 3 grand screen, and the brightness is my weakness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
So
like, I'm not for Instagram or online or whatever. I don't enlarge them very big, and they're normally I don't adjust the brightness up. But if I'm gonna do a big print, then it's anywhere between 10 and 30% brighter than what I'm doing for screen viewing, simply because I know that those shadows won't show up properly. They'll just be black blobs if I don't do that.
yeah, it's the detail in the shop.
Is
That's
it
the hard part.
10%? Is it 20%? Is it 15? Is it 30?
Yeah, yeah. I actually go
That's
down
just the
the
million
hard
dollar
guessing
question.
game. Yeah, yeah, I know.
And there's probably people that do their own printing screaming at the podcast right now, going, "It's not that hard."
I know one person you've had on that I respect quite a lot. That I asked him his advice for a printer as well, and he said, "Oh no, I just do my own." And I just cringed and went and hid in the corner. I think I can't even get it right when someone else does it. But that's a challenge, and I've still got 6 to go for my next one, my next level, and that's what keeps you interested too. If you're not challenged, it gets boring.
Have you found the Fiat process?
Look, I've really enjoyed it. When I went into it, I thought I didn't want to do it on my own. Because I wanted to do it properly. And that's why we talked briefly about seeing Mika and following Mika Boynton. And look, she's been invaluable. And I can recommend her to anybody who wants to either go through that process or just learn how to see properly.
Yeah.
Because all of us I look at images when I'm processing them, and that looks fine. And then now I pixel peep and I can see things that she sees. Now it's difficult now because I see too much.
Yeah, pixel peeping can be dangerous. I
Yeah.
used to do quite a lot of video screenshot editing and trying to. I know this sounds really bizarre, but you would take a screenshot of something in a game, for example, and try to make that look as much like a realistic photograph as possible.
Oh, right.
And yeah, spending something like 35 hours in a week to try and bend this image to make it look like a photo. And so if it was, say, a warbird like a Spitfire or a Mustang or something like that, you'd be trying to make that look like a 1930s, 1940s photo in
Okay.
black and white with all the grain and different lighting effects and all the rest of this sort of thing on it. And doing that editing process dragged me down some rabbit holes that I never want to go back in with the photography.
I know. There are some things that it's like one of those things you do it once and it's just like, I'll pass on that shot because I don't want to spend days and days on it. The fiat process has been great, but what I would say to anyone who wants to look into it, and I recommend it highly, is that it's quite complex in the administrative side of it. You've got to really be really careful with your record keeping and how you get verified by a verifying officer. It's all very proper. I made my verifying officer crazy the last couple of months before I got fiat because my record keeping was good, but it wasn't to the standard that they want, which is fine. So I'd recommend getting advice and look, there's no better place to go really than the way I've done it. And I've got an ongoing relationship with Mika and seeing what comes next and all that kind of thing. It's definitely worth the investment and you learn so much more out of it than just going into comp. It's not just going into comps. And you're going into exhibitions in weird and wonderful places, like anywhere you can think of, Serbia and all these weird and wonderful places, Colombia. And so that adds to the interest as well, because you're part of an international community of photographers and not just a local one. Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Cool. What do you do if you start to lose the love a little bit and you hit a creative wall and you're sitting there going, I'm not feeling it? What do you do about that to get yourself over it, around it, under it?
I tend to switch. I don't have wildlife gear at the moment, but I'd either go out and shoot wildlife, and I went through a state of that a year or so ago, and I really loved it, and I had the right gear for it. And creative's the other angle for me. And creative, like the things that I'm really itching to get back to is one of my recent posts was of the Western Building, and I saw a shot from Ben Tang a long time ago, and thought that was a really awesome shot. So that's been on my list for a long time. And so light trails are something I really enjoy, and night photography I enjoy generally, but I don't get to do it as much. But the great thing is we can switch. If it's not a great sunny day, you can go out and do a black and white. If the day hasn't produced anything and it's Saturday, go into town and you can get something from the light trails. So I try to keep switching, and then while I'm doing that, I'm thinking I'm really missing landscapes. I'll go back to landscapes. It's a sneaky psychological trick.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
Oh, those two awful letters that are floating all over the place.
Everyone says that. Personally, for landscape, I don't think it's that much of a challenge because, yeah, okay, someone will nut out how to make a realistic looking landscape because most of them you look at, I'd say 95 to 99% of them you look at and you can go, yeah, that's AI generated. That's just not natural. But other photography, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of debate about it.
Yeah, and look, generally, and I'm one of the biggest people that have done this in their stages in their photography journey. Is I went through a stage of dropping in skies because I wanted to learn how to mask.
Yeah.
And then I submitted some of those images to exhibitions, and I'm talking about maybe 2 or 3 images that I submitted. Yeah. And they were real because they were just skies from a different point in time or that type of thing. But there are people that are taking that to a completely over the top level where it looks real, but then you look at it again and you think, no, that's not quite right. But I think that's because we're photographers and we're doing it all the time. But to the sort of normal,
the lay people don't recognise it. Yeah.
But I think we've got to be super careful with AI, and I think that's the biggest problem at the moment. I don't think social media is a problem unless you make it one. Like I've been waiting to hit 5,000 followers for 9 months or something now, and I'm 250 short or something, and it's not really an important thing. I know you could go out and easily get 10,000 followers, but
I shed about 1,000 followers earlier in the year. I actually went through and found a whole bunch of inactive and bot accounts.
Yeah,
it was horrible and manual to do, but I was bored and I had the time, so I did it. And so I knocked off I think it was about 1,050 or something like that.
I've done that in the past too.
Yeah.
I'd
rather have people that are engaged.
That's exactly right.
Real people.
And people say to me, "Oh, you get a lot of likes for someone with so many followers." I don't understand any of these rules, but look, I just like people that enjoy my work, and I just want to share my work with people.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't think social media is that much of an issue if you have another outlet. And if that's printing your work, if that's exhibiting your work as prints on a gallery wall, or if that's doing the way I did it, it doesn't really matter. But I think the important thing is don't put all your eggs in one basket and rely on the algorithm gods to get you through. Yeah, I think apart from AI, I think that social media it can be a really good thing, but it can also be a bit of an evil thing as well.
Yeah. Where do you see photography in society?
Oh, that's a tricky one. As part of society, you mean?
Yeah.
Like it's critical, right? We're taking time and then so like it's critical. And it doesn't matter if you're a documentary photographer, that's more important. Or if you do what we do and you just take the landscape. And Tarameta is a perfect example, right? I am so distressed that channel has been sealed up at Tarameta, but I've got a lot
It'll plane out at some point.
It will. I'm waiting for a big storm. But I guess what I was trying to get at was that at least I've got that captured from those times when it was changing, because it's ever changing down there. So look, photography is as important to me as music as far as what it does for society. Yeah, for sure.
What do you see as its future? And not just in society, but in general.
I think it'll always be here, photography. People on YouTube could always say, oh, the cameras are dead and there's no point for SLRs and DSLRs and mirrorless anymore because of phones and all that. But there is a difference between a phone and especially the kind of camera equipment we use on the top end. But it's also the technical aspects of photography that you'll never get out of a phone. And it will always be here, Grant. Look how long it's been around for nearly as long as electricity, if not before. So I don't think it'll ever go away. I hope it doesn't really change in form, and things like NFTs and that type of thing. They're okay, but you don't want it to cheapen the work that we do because it is important work that we do. We capture the world we live in. It's great.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you make a great point there about it being a nanosecond in time, or sometimes 720 seconds because of a long exposure. But it's that instant in time being captured, and as you said, you're capturing the world and seeing it as it is now for future generations. I was talking to somebody recently about that, and one of the reasons why I print a lot of books, and in those books are not just the art shots, but also holiday snapshots and all the rest of that. They've taken over from the old new photo album and put your 4x8 prints in or whatever, because that used to be the way. And I've got a ton of the things in this bookcase behind me. That used to be the way that showed your memories to your children and to your grandchildren and whatever. And those books that I'm producing are I look at them along the same sort of lines, is that they're going to be a legacy for some time, and they're going to be there for my children and their children, and hopefully their children as well. Yeah.
It's important because the other thing, that one of the downsides of digital is we've got thousands of photos on our phones of family memories and stuff like that. When the kids were young, I was spending weekends doing videos. Like, this was 15 years ago, and it took a whole weekend to compile a video. And now it's lost in this sea of thousands of images. So it's good what you do. I should be doing that at least with the family photos, is to make photo books and do that, because they are memories as well. And that's another thing that photography gives, is you remember that moment, and it gives like a mini deja vu moment when you go look at some of those old photos.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, what's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
Oh, I'm a geek. So that would be the favorite thing about it, I think. I'm a very much a plus one person too. I have a severe addiction to plus one rule. And I play guitar on, that's my other lifelong passion. I've been
Yeah,
doing it
right.
longer than this even. And yeah, I'm always, every time the family sees me watching gear reviews or something, it's, oh God, change the channel kind of thing. So I love the gear, and one of the things for me is, even with Fujifilm, to give them a bit of a plug. When I came back to it, I'd only known Fujifilm from buying their transparencies, really.
Yeah,
So I knew the color system and all that, but I didn't know anything else. And I looked at Canon because I'd come from Canon, and then I saw Fuji had this XT camera with all the dials. I'm very much a retro kind of guy as well,
yeah,
so it
right.
ticked a lot of boxes for me. So I think that'd be the answer to the question. The short answer is geek, for sure.
What's the worst thing about being a photographer?
I don't think there is. I honestly don't.
No downsides.
No, I don't think so. As long as you approach, it's like anything. If you approach it the right way and you've got the right sort of psychological point of view, and you're not trying to become this world-class person in overnight,
Yeah,
then you should enjoy it. And even if you come home and throw away every image, you should enjoy it. And it comes back to that experience thing that you and I talked about at the beginning. You don't just stick your head behind a viewfinder. You should be taking it all in. I was a diver for many years, a long time, and I never did photography in underwater photography because I would have missed too much.
yeah, yeah,
So there's that aspect, and that's why I like long exposures too, because you can sit back and enjoy the experience while the camera's doing the work for you.
yeah.
So yeah, there's no downside, I don't think.
Oh, awesome. What's the best or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
Oh, graduated filters would be one. Broken so many of those that my wife doesn't know about, but very expensive mistake to be had. And they don't really offer a lot of, when you get better, I hate those dark patches that you get. When you go down to Cathedral Rock or something and you put a grad filter on the front, and you get these unrecoverable,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
destructive. And yeah, so as you get on, so that's one. The best piece of advice: buy a carbon tripod. I had an aluminium tripod to begin with that lasted about a month.
Yeah, aluminium and seascaping don't go well together.
No, and they know that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'm up for a new one soon, and it's a bit of a shock, bit of a
yeah.
price shock. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not cheap, but I might have a word to you about that. Actually, I can do you a couple of different carbon on my shop on my
Oh,
website.
yeah, all right. I'll reach out. Yeah. I'm
So
I'm holding on to this Siri one. It's been a great tripod.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit light for the GFX gear as well. But yeah, I'll.
Yeah, they're not cheap though.
No, I know, I know. I looked at Pro Media Gear. I've got one of their gimbals, and I love their stuff, but
Yeah.
it's yes, just so expensive.
If you had a look at Explorer, they're not bad either.
No, I heard about those. The Siri guys that are now in Pennant Hills, I think,
Yeah.
they selling those as well. The biggest problem with that is trying to find something that is intuitive. You get it's like the Fuji system,
Yeah, that's you get used to how it works, and yeah, I know the feeling.
but the ball head on my thing is just horrendous. It's either floppy or it doesn't move at all. It's one way or the other. It's had its day. It's 50,000 frames in, I think, or something.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we're going to have to wrap up shortly. I've only got another couple of questions for you. Are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to?
Oh, loads. Like I mentioned a few, but I thought of a few others. Daniel Corden and Jack Furman are two people I just find they not only do amazing photography, but their general footage is just terrific. And Daniel's stuff from Vietnam just blew me away. So they're two. And locally, people like Bampy that I mentioned, Abraham, really like his work. And I've always enjoyed Ben Tang's work as well. And Ben's a nice guy. He's a good guy to have
Yeah,
on.
I've met Ben out in the field a couple of times actually.
Yeah, I think those two are the key ones. Andy Mumford's I'm a big fan of his guy, and big fan of Adam Gibbs and Nick Page as well.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
yeah, but good luck getting Nick Page on. He's flying all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, no, I know. I've had Adam Gibbs, but yeah, haven't been able to
Yeah,
get hold of Nick Page. There's a few others out there that I'm trying to drag in, but yeah, they're a bit elusive. I managed to snag Art Wolf though, and they'll be coming on in a few months. Actually, he's busy, I'm busy, and so we're probably going to catch up in September time.
and I would give Pedro King a shout. He is all
Yeah.
for night photography. He's one of the best around, actually. But yeah. Yeah.
All right, thanks for those. You've listened to the podcast, so I know what's coming. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do, mate. I'm a ham and pineapple fan, and the great thing is I get the whole pineapple to myself because the family don't like it, so it's a double win for me. No, I'm a big fan of pineapple pizza. Yeah.
Nice. It's been wonderful meeting you and getting to know you a lot better. Where can people find your work, David?
I'm mainly on Instagram, back behind the lens. I'm on Facebook as well, and I've got a website which is backbehindthelens.com.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, mate.
Really appreciate you having me on, Grant. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I also have a gear store and prints on that website. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.